The morning sun cast long shadows across the endless fields of New Eden. Jake Morrison stood on the porch of his simple wooden house, watching the golden wheat sway in the gentle breeze. He held a steaming cup of coffee in his weathered hands, and breathed in the fresh air. To anyone looking, he was just a farmer enjoying the peaceful start of another day, but Jake's eyes were not watching the wheat. They were focused on the small display hidden inside his coffee mug. Green dots moved slowly across a star map, showing the positions of ships in nearby space. His jaw tightened as he noticed 3 red dots moving closer to their system. "Jake, you seeing this?" Maria Santos walked up behind him, carrying her own cup. She was a small woman with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her clothes were dirty from working in the fields, but her eyes were sharp and alert. "Yeah, I see them," Jake said quietly. He took another sip of coffee and kept his voice calm. "Zephyrian scouts. Still 2 days out?" Maria nodded and sat down on the porch steps. To anyone watching, they looked like 2 farmers discussing the weather. But they were actually talking about enemy warships that could destroy their entire colony. "Should we send word to the others?" Maria asked. "Not yet. Let's see what they do first." Jake's voice was steady, but his grip on the coffee mug tightened. Slightly. New Eden had been their home for 3 years now. The planet was beautiful, with rich soil and perfect weather for growing crops. Rolling hills covered in green grass stretched as far as the eye could see. Clear streams ran through valleys filled with fruit trees. It was the kind of place people dreamed of when they thought about leaving Earth behind. The colony had started small, just 50 people looking for a new life. Now they had grown to 200 settlers, all working together to build something better. They grew enough food to feed themselves and still had plenty left over to trade with passing ships. Their reports back to Earth were always the same. Good harvests, no problems. Just simple farming folk doing their work. Pete Hamilton came walking up the dirt road from the equipment barn. He was a big man with strong arms and grease under his fingernails. His coveralls were patched in several places, and he carried a toolbox that had seen better days. He looked like every mechanic in every small town across human space. "Morning, Jake, Maria." Pete set down his toolbox and wiped his hands on a rag. "Got the harvester working again. That bearing you ordered from the last supply ship did the trick." "Good work, Pete. How are the other machines running?" Jake asked. "Pretty well. The irrigation system needs some attention, but nothing major. Should be able to keep everything running smooth for harvest season." Pete's words were casual, but his eyes met Jake's for just a moment. There was something more in that look, something that went beyond farm equipment. The 3 of them stood there in comfortable silence, watching the fields. In the distance, other colonists were already at work. Some were checking on the livestock in the large pens near the river. Others were working in the vegetable gardens that supplied fresh food for the colony. Children ran between the buildings, playing games and laughing. It looked perfect. It looked peaceful. It looked exactly like what it was supposed to look like. "Jake, incoming message from Earth," called out Danny Park from the communications building. Danny was young, maybe 25, with glasses and the pale skin of someone who spent most of his time indoors. He was their link to the outside world, handling all the radio traffic and data transmissions. Jake walked over to the small building that housed their communications equipment. The room was filled with the usual farming colony gear: weather monitors, soil sensors, and equipment for coordinating supply shipments. But tucked away in the corner was a much more sophisticated system that Danny used for their real work. "What's the word from home?" Jake asked as Danny handed him a datapad. "Supply ship is running late. Won't be here for another month. Also, they want an update on the grain production numbers." Danny's voice was normal, but he tapped the datapad twice with his finger. That was the signal that there was more information hidden in the message. Jake read through the farming report, but his trained eyes picked out the real message hidden in the shipping schedules and crop rotation data. Earth was asking if they were ready. The answer was yes, they had been ready for 2 years now. But hopefully they would never need to prove it. "Tell them the harvest is going well. We'll have the numbers ready by the end of the week. Jake." Sod Handing back the datapad. As Jake walked back toward his house, he noticed Lisa Chang working in her garden. She was pulling weeds from around the tomato plants, her movements careful and precise. Lisa had been a teacher before coming to New Eden, and she still taught the colony's children in the small schoolhouse they had built near the center of town. "Morning, Lisa. How are the kids doing with their lessons?" Jake asked, stopping by the garden fence. "Very well. Jimmy Watson is getting much better at math, and Sarah Kim wrote a wonderful story about life on the colony." Lisa smiled as she spoke, but her hands never stopped moving among the plants. "They're good kids. They deserve to grow up somewhere safe." Jake nodded. That was what this was all about, really. Keeping people safe. Keeping families together. Making sure children could play in fields without worrying about warships in the sky. "Jake, you got a minute?" called out Carl Brown from the equipment shed. Carl was in charge of maintaining all the heavy machinery they used for farming. Tractors, harvesters, irrigation pumps, and dozens of other machines that kept the colony running. Jake walked over to find Carl looking at a large piece of equipment covered by a tarp. It looked like a standard grain silo from the outside, but Jake knew it was much more than that. "System check came back green across the board," Carl sighed quietly. "Everything's running perfect, just like it should be." "Good, let's keep it that way." Jake's voice was calm, but both men understood the importance of what they were discussing. The rest of the morning passed like any other. Jake checked on the cattle, looked over the latest weather reports, and discussed crop rotation schedules with the other farmers. He ate lunch with his neighbors, talking about normal things like whose turn it was to fix the fence and whether they should plant more corn next season, but all the while, part of his mind was tracking those red dots on his hidden display. The Zephyrian ships were still coming, still 2 days away. Maybe they would pass by without stopping. Maybe they would decide that a simple farming colony wasn't worth their time, or maybe they would make the biggest mistake of their lives. As the sun started to set, Jake stood on his porch again, watching the lights come on in the houses scattered across the valley. Families were sitting down to dinner, children were finishing their homework, and couples were talking about their plans for tomorrow. It was a good life, a simple life, the kind of life that made all the hard choices worthwhile. Jake finished his coffee and went inside. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, but tonight New Eden was peaceful and his people were safe. That was all that mattered, at least for now. In the distance, 3 red dots continued their steady approach through the darkness of space. War Commander Kyloth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Crusher, staring at the star map with his 4 yellow eyes. His 8-foot frame towered over the other Zephyrians on the bridge. His dark green exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh lights, and his 4 arms ended in claws sharp enough to cut through steel. Like all of his kind, he was built for war. The Zephyrian Empire had been fighting the Galactic Federation for 3 long years. Every battle had been a victory for Kyloth's people. The weak species of the Federation could not match Zephyrian strength, speed, or technology. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, and their warriors more deadly than anything the galaxy had ever seen. "War Commander, we have found something," said Sub-Commander Vex, approaching with a data tablet in his lower arms. Vex was younger than Kyloth, his exoskeleton still bright green instead of the darker color that came with age and battle scars. "What is it?" Kyloth's voice was deep and rough, like grinding stone. "A human colony, sir. On the 3rd planet of this system, our scouts detected it during their patrol sweep." Vex handed over the tablet, his claws clicking against the metal surface. Kyloth looked at the information with disgust. Humans were among the weakest of all Federation species. They had no natural armor, no claws, no superior strength. They were soft, pink creatures that should have been wiped out long ago. The only reason they had survived this long was because they hid behind stronger allies. "How many of these pathetic creatures are there?" Kyloth asked. "Approximately 200, War Commander. They appear to be engaged in agricultural activities, growing food crops and raising livestock." Vex's voice carried the same disgust that all Zephyrians felt when discussing humans. Kyloth studied the scanner readings more carefully. The planet was called New Eden according to their database. It sat in contested space, far from any major trade routes or military installations. The scans showed exactly what Vex had reported: a small farming settlement with simple buildings, crop fields, and animal pens. Any defensive capabilities? Kyloth asked, though he already knew the answer. None detected, sir. No weapon signatures, no military installations, no shield generators. Standard farming equipment only? Tractors, harvesters, irrigation systems? Nothing that could threaten even our smallest fighter craft. Kyloth's claws drummed against the armrest of his command chair. Part of him wanted to ignore this insignificant colony entirely. 200 human farmers were hardly worth the ammunition it would take to destroy them. His fleet had more important targets to pursue, but then he had a better idea. Sub-Commander, how long since we broadcast a message to the Federation worlds? Kyloth asked. 12 days, sir. Our last propaganda transmission showed the destruction of the mining station at Beta Centauri. Perfect. It is time for another demonstration. Kyloth's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among his people. We will make an example of this human colony. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who oppose the Zephyrian Empire. Vex nodded eagerly. Shall the First order the attack, War Commander? Not yet. First, we will give them a chance to surrender. I want their fear recorded for the broadcast. The sight of humans begging for mercy will break the spirit of Federation resistance. Throughout the sector, Kyloth turned to his communications officer. Prepare a wideband transmission. I want every Federation world within 50 light-years to receive this message. Show them the power of the Empire and the weakness of their allies. The communications officer, a scarred veteran named Grak, began working at his station. Transmission ready, War Commander. All Federation frequencies are being monitored and recorded. Excellent. Navigator, set course for the human world, maximum speed. Kyloth stood up from his chair, his full height making him an imposing figure. On the bridge, the Bone Crusher was the flagship of Battle Group 7, one of the most feared Zephyrian fleets in the galaxy. 12 heavy cruisers, 48 destroyers, and over 300 fighter craft. More than enough firepower to destroy an entire star system, let alone one small farming colony. As the fleet moved toward New Eden, Kyloth reviewed the tactical data one more time. The human settlement was located in a valley surrounded by rolling hills. Perfect terrain for a farming community, but terrible for defense. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The humans would be trapped like animals in a cage. War Commander, we are receiving standard agricultural transmissions from the planet, reported Grak. Weather data, crop status reports, livestock inventory. Nothing unusual. Of course not. These creatures are too stupid to realize they are about to die. Kyloth's laugh was a harsh, grating sound. Continue monitoring their communications. I want to know if they detect our approach. 2 hours passed as the Zephyrian fleet closed. The distance to New Eden. Kyloth watched the scanner displays, expecting to see signs of panic from the human colony at any moment. But their transmissions remained normal. Agricultural reports, maintenance schedules, requests for supply shipments. It was as if they had no idea that death was approaching. Incredible, muttered Vex. Do they not have any sensors at all? They are farmers, Sub-Commander. What would farmers need with military sensors? Kyloth was actually impressed by how completely unprepared the humans were. It would make their destruction even more satisfying. War Commander, we are now within attack range, announced the weapons officer. Not yet. Bring us into orbit first. I want them to see the full power of our fleet before they die. Kyloth wanted the humans to understand exactly how hopeless their situation was. As the Zephyrian ships entered orbit around New Eden, Kyloth could see the planet spread out below them. Green fields, blue rivers, white clouds drifting across a peaceful sky. It looked almost too pretty to destroy, almost Sir, we are detecting increased communication traffic from the surface, Grack reported. They have noticed our arrival. Good. Are you recording everything? Yes, War Commander. Full spectrum recording is active. Every word they speak will be broadcast to the Federation. Kyloth activated the main viewing screen and looked down at the human colony. Through their long-range cameras, he could see the tiny figures of humans moving around their settlement. Some were running between buildings. Others had stopped their work to stare up at the sky. He could imagine their terror as they realized what was about to happen. Open a channel to the colony, Kyloth ordered. Let us hear them beg for their lives. The main screen changed to show the interior of what looked like a simple farm office. A human male sat behind a wooden desk, wearing plain work clothes. He had gray hair and a weathered face that spoke of years spent working outdoors. Behind him, Kyloth could see agricultural charts and equipment manuals hanging on the walls. The human looked directly into the camera with calm, steady eyes. There was no fear in his expression, which surprised Kyloth. Most species began trembling the moment they saw a Zephyrian warrior. This is Jake Morrison, administrator of New Eden Colony, the human said in a clear, quiet voice. We are a peaceful, agricultural settlement. How can we help you? Kyloth leaned forward in his chair, his claws extending slightly. I am War Commander Kyloth of the Zephyrian Empire. You are trespassing in Imperial space, human. Your presence here is an act of war. The human named Jake nodded slowly. I understand your concern, War Commander, but we are just farmers trying to grow food for hungry people. We have no weapons, no military forces. We pose no threat to anyone. All humans are a threat to the natural order of the galaxy, Kyloth snarled. Your weak species pollutes the stars with your very existence. Jake Morrison's expression did not change. He remained calm, almost sad. War Commander, we have children here, families, people who have never hurt anyone in their lives. Surely, there is no honor in destroying innocent farmers. Kyloth's mandibles clicked with amusement. Honor? You speak to me of honor, soft creature? The only honor is in victory. The only victory is in the complete destruction of your pathetic species. I see. Jake Morrison was quiet for a moment, then spoke again. War Commander, I respectfully request safe passage for our people. We will leave this world and never return. You have my word. Your word means nothing, human. You have 1 minute to prepare for annihilation. Use it to make peace with whatever weak gods your kind worship. Kyloth cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. Target. All population centers. I want nothing left alive on that planet. As the Zephyrian fleet powered up their weapons, Kyloth felt the familiar rush of excitement that came before battle. In 1 minute, another human colony would be nothing but dust and ash. The galaxy would see this recording and tremble at the might of the Zephyrian Empire. He had no way of knowing that he had just made the greatest mistake in the history of his species. Jake Morrison sat calmly in his farm office as the transmission ended. The Zephyrian War Commander had given him 1 minute to prepare for death. Jake looked at his watch and smiled slightly. 1 minute was more than enough time. He reached under his desk and pressed a hidden button. Throughout New Eden, a silent signal went out to every colonist. It was time to drop the act. Maria, Pete, Danny, this is Jake. Harvest time. Authorization code Sierra 7 Alpha, he said quietly into his communicator. The response was immediate. All across the colony, 200 farmers stopped what they were doing and moved with sudden purpose. There was no panic, no confusion. Every person knew exactly what to do and where to go. In her garden, Lisa Chang dropped her watering can and ran toward the schoolhouse, but she wasn't going to protect the children. She was going to activate the defensive systems hidden beneath the building. The woman who had been pulling weeds moments before was actually Captain Lisa Chang, one of Earth's best tactical officers. Pete Hamilton dropped his mechanic's coveralls as he ran toward the equipment barn. Underneath, he wore the black uniform of Admiral Peter Hamilton, former commander of Earth's Experimental Weapons Division. The man who had been fixing farm equipment was about to unleash weapons that could crack planets. Danny, Park's fingers flew over his communications console, but he wasn't sending farming reports anymore. Code sequences flowed across his screens as he activated systems that had been sleeping for 3 years. The shy young man with glasses was actually Major Daniel Park, Earth's top electronic warfare specialist. Above them in orbit, War Commander. Kyloth watched his weapon displays show full power. His fleet was ready to turn New Eden into a burning wasteland. He had no idea that in the next 90 seconds, everything he thought he knew about humans was about to change forever. "All ships report ready, War Commander," announced his weapons officer. "Excellent. Begin bombardment on my mark." Kyloth raised one clawed hand, savoring the moment. "Fire!" The first energy beams lanced down toward New Eden's surface. They should have vaporized buildings and turned the peaceful farming valley into a crater. Instead, something impossible happened. The beams struck an invisible barrier and scattered harmlessly into space. "What?" Kyloth stared at his displays in shock. "Weapons officer report." "Sir, our weapons are functioning normally, but something is deflecting our fire. I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface." On New Eden, the grain silos began to split open like giant flowers, but inside there were no crops. Instead, massive railguns rose from hidden chambers, their barrels longer than any weapon Kyloth had ever seen. Each gun was aimed directly at his fleet. The gentle hills around the colony suddenly dropped their disguise. What had looked like grass-covered slopes were actually armored weapon platforms. Missile launchers, plasma cannons, and devices that hurt to look at directly emerged from concealment. The irrigation ditches that had carried water to the crops retracted to reveal launch tubes for weapons that seemed to bend space itself. The barn where Pete had been working exploded outward as a massive fortress rose from underground, bristling with more firepower than most battle stations. "Impossible," whispered Subcommander Vex, staring at the transformation below them. "The scans showed nothing at all." "Our scans were correct," Kyloth snarled. "This is some kind of trick, some illusion." But it wasn't an illusion. For 3 years, the colonists of New Eden had maintained perfect discipline. Every day they had tended real crops, raised real livestock, and sent real agricultural reports to Earth. The food they grew fed other colonies throughout human space. But the entire operation was a cover for the most advanced military installation ever built. On the surface, Colonel Jake Morrison stood in what was now clearly revealed as a military command center. Banks of tactical displays showed the positions of every Zephyrian ship. Weapon status indicators glowed green across the board. His people were ready. "Dr. Santos, weapon systems online?" Jake asked. "All systems green, Colonel." "Exotic matter. Cannons are charged and ready." Maria Santos no longer looked like a simple botanist. Her farming clothes had been replaced by the uniform of Earth's leading weapons physicist. Admiral Hamilton, defensive grid status. Planetary shields at maximum. Power, Colonel. Nothing's getting through. Pete Hamilton's grease-stained coveralls were gone, replaced by the dress uniform he had worn when commanding Earth's most secret weapons projects. "Major Park, communications?" "Full spectrum jamming active, sir." "The Zephyrians can't call for help, and their ships can't coordinate with each other." Danny Park's shy demeanor had vanished completely. His fingers danced across control panels with the skill of someone who had spent years preparing for this moment. In orbit, the Zephyrian fleet was discovering that their weapons were useless against New Eden's defenses. Worse, their communications were being jammed by signals so sophisticated that their equipment couldn't even detect the source. "War Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the planet," Grack announced. "Put it on screen." Jake Morrison appeared again, but he was no longer in a simple farm office. He stood in a military command center that looked more advanced than anything in the Zephyrian fleet. His farming clothes were gone, replaced by a uniform that bore the insignia of a full colonel in Earth's military. "War Commander Kyloth," Jake said calmly, "allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Colonel Jacob Morrison, commanding officer of Firebase Demeter." What you took for a farming colony is actually humanity's most advanced military installation. Kyloth's claws scraped against his command chair. Lies. Our scans detected no weapons, no military signatures. Your scans detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. We've been preparing for this moment for 3 years, War Commander. We knew you would come eventually. On the tactical display, Colonel Morrison could see the Zephyrian ships starting to spread out, trying to find a weakness. In New Eden's defenses, there were none. Every approach was covered by weapons that could destroy entire fleets. You have made the mistake of attacking a human military installation, War Commander. Under the laws of war, I am authorized to respond with appropriate force. Jake's voice was still calm, but there was steel beneath the words. You cannot defeat the might of the Zephyrian Empire, human. We are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Perhaps. But today you're not fighting warriors, War Commander. Today you're fighting farmers, and farmers know all about harvesting. Jake turned to his weapons officer. Captain Chang, you may fire when ready. Yes, sir, Colonel. Lisa Chang's hands moved over her control panel with deadly precision. Engaging enemy fleet, the first railgun fired with a sound like thunder. The projectile, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, struck the Zephyrian destroyer Fang Ripper dead. Center. The warship, which had terrorized Federation worlds for 2 years, simply ceased to exist. More railguns opened fire. Each shot was perfectly aimed, striking Zephyrian ships with impossible accuracy. The aliens' shields, which had protected them against every Federation weapon, were useless against kinetic projectiles moving at such incredible speeds. Evasive maneuvers! Kyloth roared. All ships evasive maneuvers, but there was nowhere to run. As the Zephyrian ships tried to scatter, the missile launchers around New Eden came online. Hundreds of missiles streaked into space, each one guided by targeting systems that could track a grain of sand in a dust storm. War Commander, we're losing ships faster than I can count them, reported Vex, his voice high with panic. Return fire! All weapons return fire. The Zephyrian fleet unleashed everything they had at New Eden. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, fusion bombs, exotic radiation weapons that could cook the air itself. All of it struck the planetary shields and scattered harmlessly. Their defenses are impenetrable, sir. Our weapons have no effect. On New Eden, Dr. Santos activated her exotic matter cannons. The weapons used principles of physics that most species hadn't even discovered yet. They fired streams of matter that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously, making them impossible to block or deflect. The Zephyrian heavy cruiser deaths. Edge tried to jump to hyperspace, but Major Park's jamming systems prevented the navigation computers from functioning. The ship hung helpless in space as an exotic matter beam struck its hull. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the cruiser began to fold in on itself, its matter being converted directly into energy. This is impossible, Kyloth whispered, watching his fleet die around him. We are the superior species. We are the conquerors. War Commander, Jake Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. Your fleet will be completely destroyed in exactly 6 minutes and 37 seconds. I'm offering you one chance to surrender. Zephyrians, do not surrender to inferior species. Then you will die with honor, War Commander. I respect that choice. Jake nodded to his weapons crew. Finish it. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted exactly 9 minutes from the first shot to the last. When it was over, the most powerful Zephyrian fleet in the galaxy was nothing but expanding clouds of debris. Not a single human had been injured. Colonel Morrison stood looking at the tactical display showing empty space where the enemy fleet had been. His farmers had harvested their crop, and the galaxy would never be the same. The silence in space where the Zephyrian fleet had been was deafening. Pieces of destroyed warships drifted slowly through the void, glowing with the heat of their destruction. War Commander Kyloth's flagship, the Bone Crusher, was gone. So was every other ship in Battle Group 7, but the real shock was not the destruction of the fleet. The real shock was spreading across the galaxy as every major power received the complete recording of what had happened at New Eden. In the Capital city of the Galactic Federation, President Chain sat in her office watching the battle footage for the third time. Her hands shook as she held her coffee cup. Around the conference table, her top military advisors sat in stunned silence. "How long have we known about this?" she asked quietly. General Adams, the Federation's highest-ranking officer, cleared his throat. "We didn't know, Madam President. Earth never told us they had installations like this." 3 years, muttered Admiral Rodriguez. "For 3 years we've been losing this war. We've lost entire star systems, billions of lives. And the humans had weapons like this the whole time?" On the screen, they watched Jake Morrison calmly destroy the most feared fleet in Zephyrian space. The railguns fired their impossible projectiles. The exotic matter cannons bent reality itself. The defensive shields that made the planet untouchable. "Sir, we're receiving communication requests from over 40 Federation worlds," reported the communications officer. "They all want to know if Earth has more installations like New Eden." President Chun rubbed her temples. "Get me a direct line. To Earth, I want to speak to their president immediately." Across the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire was in chaos. High Command had lost all contact with Battle Group 7. The fleet had simply vanished from their tracking systems. The last transmission had been War Commander Kyloth's confident announcement that he was about to destroy a human farming colony. Supreme War Leader Vex stood in the Empire's main command center, his forearms crossed in anger. His dark exoskeleton was covered in battle scars from 50 years of conquest. He had never seen his people defeated, never seen their fleets destroyed so completely. "Show me the recording again," he ordered. The holographic display showed the battle from beginning to end. Vex watched as the human colony transformed into a military fortress in 90 seconds. He saw railguns that fired faster than light. He watched exotic weapons that his best scientists couldn't even understand. "This cannot be real," he said. "No species has technology this advanced, not even the Andromedans." "The recording has been verified by 3 separate analysis teams," Supreme War Leader reported his intelligence officer. "It is genuine. The humans have weapons beyond anything we have encountered." Vex's claws scraped against the metal floor. "One colony. This is just one human colony. How many others are there?" "Unknown, sir. Our intelligence on human military capabilities appears to have been completely wrong." In the deep space monitoring station at Alpha Centauri, the crew watched in amazement as the recording spread across the galactic communication network. Every species, every government, every military force was seeing the same thing. Humanity had revealed capabilities that changed everything. Captain Williams, the station commander, received a priority message from Earth Fleet Command. She read it twice before she could believe what it said. Communications, broadcast the following. Message on all frequencies. This is Captain Williams, Alpha Centauri Monitoring Station. The engagement at New Eden was conducted by Firebase Demeter, one of 73 similar installations throughout human space. Any hostile force approaching a human colony will face similar consequences. The message was a lie. There weren't 73 installations like New Eden. There were over 200, but the galaxy didn't need to know that yet. On Rigel 7, the mining colony that had been attacked by Zephyrians just last month, the workers gathered around their communication screens. They had thought they were defenseless, forgotten by their government, left to die if the aliens came back. Now they looked at their mining equipment with new eyes. The massive excavators, the ore processing plants, the deep drilling rigs. If New Eden's farming equipment could hide weapons, what about their mining gear? "Hey, Joe," called out one of the miners to his foreman. "That new drilling platform we got last year. The one with all the extra electronics. You think maybe it's not just for drilling?" Joe looked at the platform in question. It was certainly bigger than necessary for mining operations. And those electronics had always seemed too advanced for simple or extraction. "You know what, Bill? I think maybe we should check the manual again, real carefully." Similar conversations were happening on human colonies throughout the galaxy. People were looking at their equipment, Their installations, their neighbors with new understanding, the quiet librarian who knew too much about military history, the mechanic who seemed to understand technology that hadn't been invented yet, the farmer who always seemed to know when ships were coming before they appeared on sensors. Earth had been playing a completely different game than anyone realized. In the Zephyrian Empire, panic was spreading through the highest levels of command. Supreme War Leader Vex had called an emergency meeting of all sector commanders. The holographic projections of his top military leaders filled the command center. "We need to know how many of these human installations exist," Vex said. "Our entire strategy is based on the assumption that humans are a weak species with limited military capability. Supreme War Leader, we've lost contact with 3 more patrol fleets," reported Sector Commander Grix. "They were investigating what appeared to be human research stations. None have responded to our communications." "Research stations?" Vex's mandibles clicked with nervous energy. "What kind of research?" "Atmospheric processing, deep space communications, mineral extraction, all appeared to be civilian installations." Vex felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. If the humans could disguise a military fortress as a farming colony, what else were they hiding? How many research stations were actually weapon platforms? How many mining operations were military bases? "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human home world," announced the communications officer. "Put it through." The image that appeared was not what Vex expected. Instead of a military leader or government official, he saw an elderly human woman sitting in what looked like a simple office. She wore civilian clothes and had the kind of gentle face that suggested she spent her time taking care of grandchildren. "Greetings, Supreme War Leader Vex. I am President Martinez of the United Earth Government. I believe we need to talk." Vex stared at the image. This frail human woman was the leader of the species that had just destroyed his most powerful fleet. It seemed impossible. "You are responsible for the destruction of Battle Group 7, he said. "I am responsible for the defense of human colonies, yes. Your war commander attacked what he believed was a defenseless farming community. He was wrong." "How many more installations like New Eden do you have?" President Martinez smiled sadly. "More than you would believe, Supreme War Leader. We have been preparing for this war for a very long time. This changes nothing. The Zephyrian Empire will not be defeated by clever tricks and hidden weapons. Supreme War Leader, I'm going to share something with you that I hope will save both our species unnecessary bloodshed." The human woman's voice was gentle but firm. "The installation at New Eden is not our most powerful. It's not even in our top 10. The silence that followed was complete. Every Zephyrian in the command center stared at the human woman who had just told them that their greatest military defeat had been inflicted by a minor human installation. "You're lying," Vex said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm not. Supreme War Leader, your people are great warriors. I respect that. But you've been fighting the wrong war against the wrong enemy. We never wanted this conflict. We just wanted to be left alone to grow our crops and raise our children in peace. Then why reveal your true strength now?" "President." Martinez's expression grew sad. "Because you forced us to. Because you threatened our families. Because you made it clear that peace was not an option." She leaned forward slightly. "Supreme War Leader, I'm going to give you a choice. We can end this war right now today with no more bloodshed. Or we can continue fighting, and I will show you what our top 10 installations can do." Vex looked around at his commanders. In their eyes he saw the same thing he felt in his own hearts: fear. For the first time in Zephyrian history, they were facing an enemy that could destroy them completely. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. "Complete withdrawal of all Zephyrian forces from Federation space. An end to attacks on civilian populations. And a formal peace treaty between our governments." "And if we refuse?" President Martinez's gentle smile never wavered. "Then in 24 hours, you'll understand why we called that installation Firebase Demeter. In Earth mythology, Demeter was the goddess of the harvest. She was also the goddess who could make the entire world starve." The transmission ended. Leaving the Zephyrian command center in silence, War Commander Kyloth had thought he was attacking a farming colony. Instead, he had woken up something that should have been left sleeping. The war was about to end, but not the way anyone expected. 24 hours after President Martinez's ultimatum, the galaxy waited. Every news network, every military command center, every government office was watching for what would happen next. The Zephyrian Empire had gone silent. No official response had come from their high command. On New Eden, Colonel Jake Morrison stood in his command center, now fully revealed as one of the most advanced military facilities ever built. The peaceful farm office was gone, replaced by banks of monitors showing the positions of ships throughout the sector. His uniform bore the decorations of 30 years of military service, though most of that service had been so secret that few people knew it existed. "Colonel, we're detecting movement in the Zephyrian fleet positions," reported Major Park. "Multiple ships are changing course, heading away from Federation space. How many ships, Danny?" "Over 3,000 vessels, sir. Every major fleet in the Empire appears to be withdrawing." Jake nodded slowly. "Any word from their high command?" "Nothing official yet, sir. But we're monitoring their internal communications. There's a lot of panic in their ranks." Dr. Maria Santos looked up from her weapons console. "Jake, we're receiving priority communications from Earth. President Martinez wants a status report." "Put her through." The main screen showed President Martinez in the Oval Office, surrounded by her top advisors. Despite the early hour, she looked alert and focused. Behind her, Jake could see maps showing the positions of military forces throughout human space. "Colonel Morrison, report." "Madam President, the Zephyrian fleets are withdrawing from all Federation territories. We're tracking massive ship movements heading back toward Empire space. It appears they're taking your ultimatum seriously." "Any signs of deception, hidden forces, delayed attacks?" "None that we can detect." Major Park's intelligence network shows genuine panic throughout their command structure. "They're not pretending to retreat, they're actually running?" President Martinez allowed herself a small smile. "How are our other installations holding up?" "All green across the board, ma'am." Firebase Hercules reports that the Zephyrian patrol fleet near the Vega system turned around the moment they received the New Eden footage. Firebase Athena says the aliens won't even answer their communications anymore. "Good, Colonel, I need you to prepare for visitors. The Federation Council is sending a delegation to New Eden. They want to see exactly what we've been hiding out there." "Understood, Madam President. We'll be ready for them." The transmission ended and Jake turned to his staff. "You heard the President. We're about to have company. Maria, I want all weapon systems powered down but ready for immediate activation. Pete, get the defensive systems back into standby mode. Danny, prepare a full briefing package for the Federation delegation." "What about the farming equipment, sir?" asked Captain Chang. "Do we put the camouflage systems back online?" Jake thought for a moment. "No, the secret's out now. Let them see what we really are." 3 days later, the Federation delegation arrived at New Eden aboard the diplomatic ship Unity. President Chun herself had come, along with a dozen of the Federation's top military and political leaders. As their shuttle approached the planet, they stared in amazement at what they saw. The peaceful farming colony was gone. In its place stood a military installation that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Massive weapon platforms rose from the hills like metal mountains. The grain silos had transformed into towering defense towers bristling with guns. Energy barriers shimmered in the air above the colony, creating a dome of protection that could stop any attack. "My God," whispered Admiral Rodriguez. "How long did it take to build all this?" Colonel Morrison met them at the landing pad, dressed in his full military uniform. Behind him stood his senior staff, no longer pretending to be simple farmers. Dr. Santos wore the insignia of a full professor at Earth's Military Science Academy. Admiral Hamilton's chest was covered with decorations from conflicts that were still classified. Major Park looked like what he really was, one of the most dangerous intelligence officers in human space. "Welcome to Firebase Demeter," Jake said as the delegation stepped off their shuttle. I apologize for the deception, but operational security required that we maintain our cover. President Chun looked around at the transformed landscape. Colonel, how is this possible? Our sensors detected nothing but farming equipment when we scanned this planet. Our camouflage technology is quite advanced, Madam President. We've had 50 years to develop methods of hiding military installations in plain sight. 50 years? General Adams stepped forward. You mean this project started 50 years ago? This particular installation was built 3 years ago, but the technology and planning behind it goes back 5 decades. Earth has been preparing for a galactic war since we first made contact with other species. Dr. Santos spoke up. Would you like to see the real scope of our preparations? I think it might help explain why the Zephyrians decided to retreat. She led them to a holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Hundreds of star systems were marked with small blue dots. Each dot represented a human colony, research station, mining operation, or trading post. These are all of our installations throughout the galaxy, Maria explained. What we're about to show you is classified at the highest levels. She pressed a control and the blue dots changed color. Some turned red, others yellow, still others green. The Federation leaders stared in shock as they realized what they were seeing. The red dots are Class 5 military installations like Firebase Demeter, Maria continued. We have 247 of them. The yellow dots are Class 3 installations with moderate defensive capabilities. That's 812 locations. The green dots are Class 1 installations with basic defensive systems and hidden weapon caches. Those number over 3,000. The silence that followed was complete. President Chin found her voice first. You're telling us that nearly every human colony in the galaxy is actually a military installation? Not exactly, Jake said. They're all real colonies doing real work. The farming here is genuine. We fed over 30 Federation worlds with crops grown on New Eden. But yes, they all have military capabilities that we've kept hidden. Admiral Rodriguez was studying the display. Colonel, this network could defend half the galaxy. Why didn't you tell us about this during the war? Because we weren't ready to reveal it yet. The Zephyrians forced our hand by attacking what they thought was a defenseless farming colony, but we had hoped to keep our capabilities secret for at least another decade. Another decade? Why? Pete Hamilton answered. Because we're not the only hostile species out there, Admiral. The Zephyrians were just the beginning. Our intelligence suggests there are threats coming from outside the galaxy that make the Empire look like children playing with toys. President Chun sat down heavily in a nearby chair. You're talking about the Andromedans. The reports from our deep space probes. Among others, yes, ma'am. Earth has been preparing for conflicts that haven't started yet. The Zephyrian War was just practice for us. That evening, as the Federation delegation prepared to leave New Eden, President Chun stood with Colonel Morrison on the observation deck of his command center. Below them, the transformed colony buzzed with activity as technicians maintained the massive weapon systems. Colonel, I have to ask, if you have all this military power, why did you let the war go on for 3 years? Why did you let billions of people die? Jake was quiet for a long moment. Because we needed to learn, Madam President. We needed to. Understand how the Zephyrians fought, how their technology worked, what their weaknesses were. Every battle taught us something that will help us face the next enemy. That's a cold way to look at it. Yes, ma'am, it is. But it's also the reason humanity is still alive. We've learned that in this galaxy, the species that looks harmless is the one most likely to survive. President Chun looked out at the weapon platforms rising from what had once been peaceful farmland. What happens now, Colonel? Now that everyone knows what you really are? Now we go back to farming, ma'am. We grow our crops, raise our livestock, and send our reports to Earth. The only difference is that now everyone knows not to mistake farmers for easy targets. A month later, the Zephyrian Empire officially signed a peace treaty with the Galactic Federation. The terms were simple: complete withdrawal from all Federation, territory, reparations for war damages, and a promise never to attack civilian targets again. Supreme War Leader Thex signed the document in a ceremony broadcast throughout the galaxy. When asked by reporters why the mighty Zephyrian Empire had agreed to such terms, his answer was simple. Because we learned that in a galaxy full of warriors, the most dangerous enemy is the one who looks like a farmer. On New Eden, Jake Morrison returned to his daily routine. He checked on the wheat fields, reviewed the livestock reports, and made sure the irrigation systems were working properly. The weapon platforms were still there, hidden once again beneath their camouflage systems. But now everyone knew they were there. The war that had consumed the galaxy for 3 years was over. It had ended not with a massive battle or a negotiated surrender, but with the quiet revelation that humanity had been ready to win it from the very beginning. They had just been waiting for the right time.